Pretty much anybody who's listening to this podcast could make $50,000 a month.
If your goal is to make $100,000 one year, you make $100,000, you need to 10x it next year and try to make $1 million.
So if you're trying to go to 10x, what would you have to do? It forces you to focus on the most important thing. You can't just add a side income and then go to 10x, $14 billion a year. What's up? I'm Keith.
And this is D, back with another episode of the Defiant Life podcast, where we
defy the laws of mediocrity. Look at that.
Synchronized. We should be on the swim team, bro. That was good.
Yeah, is synchronized swimming a sport that still happens?
Probably.
Yeah.
You know how? Maybe. You know, here's another thing too. I got a question. How much longer do you think before cornhole is going to be an Olympic sport?
I don't know, but they get serious. Them guys are good too. I watch that stuff on ESPN sometimes. I love cornhole.
I do too, but you pushing the agenda now. It was like, listen, they get busy.
Them dudes are
cornhole,
good.
Bruh.
No, listen, it's crazy. I see them on like shorts and stuff.
Yeah.
Some of those guys, they're like, it's incredible.
They got their own apparel.
I never heard of cornhole apparel.
Well, you said shorts.
I guess it's a thing.
So,
that's true.
I'll just play. That was a little dad joke.
Yeah, that was real bad.
Just celebrated Father's Day, so had to get the last dad joke out of there.
That's not going to be the last one.
It's probably not even on this episode. Here's my question, though, about cornhole. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you noticed this or not, mm-hmm. but whenever they participate in a tournament, they all have ear pods in. Have you noticed? Every one of them, every time. I don't know what they're listening to, but here's my question to you, Keith. If you were in a professional cornholing tournament, mm-hmm. what would your music be in that you listen to?
Probably the same thing. Okay, so either what I work out to, which is like 90s hip hop and like Tupac. It's Tupac, basically.
Okay. That's funny.
Or what I used to listen to in baseball season, which was Faith Hill and Tim McGraw, It's Your Love. That was my pregame song right there.
Oh, you can't get enough.
That's how it was. That's what it was.
You're not average at all. Like there is no average between those two songs.
It was, man.
Come on, It's Your Love. Yeah. It swims right through me. That's all.
Yeah, sort of close enough.
Can't get enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I see you. That'll help you get in the zone.
Yeah, it's emotional.
Okay.
I don't know.
Last thing I'm gonna say real quick is, it's funny that you always say Tupac, but Biggie, you like Biggie better than Tupac.
I don't want to say that. I am in a phase right now where I'm more attracted to Biggie's music than Tupac's music.
Okay.
I'm not a bigger fan of Biggie. I probably am a bigger fan of Tupac.
Okay.
I guess it goes back and forth.
It depends on how you feel.
It depends on how angry I am.
Yeah.
I think Tupac was such an interesting character. That's the thing. And Biggie, to me, of course, I didn't know these guys, but like, to me, he just seemed like just a normal dude from the hood, you know?
Yeah.
But Tupac has like a rich family history. He was like, he grew up in the Black Panther Party. Like he had a different lifestyle, and he went to a performing arts school.
Yeah.
Like it was like he shot cops.
Yeah, so I can see how you and Tupac are very alike. On one hand,
I don't shoot cops.
Well, no, I wouldn't go there. You know,
they were bad cops.
Yeah,
so
yeah, he had a reason for shooting cops.
Yeah, he was a black man in the '90s that shot some cops and didn't even get charged. So,
bro, innovator.
That's true.
I'm not saying I'm for or against that, but anywho.
Yeah. Anyway, he had a very interesting life to me. I think Biggie was just like a kid from the streets who he was a good rapper.
Yeah.
But, you know, to me, it's not the same. It's just different.
It is. It's just different. But and you know, the thing that's really amazing to me is both of them are dead now, and they never saw 30 years old. And we still talk about them today.
Yeah, well, Biggie only released one album when he was alive.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that is crazy.
That's crazy, bruh.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads me into what we're talking about today. We're going to be talking about that 10x is better than 2x philosophy and book, right? Mm-hmm. And getting into that and what it looks like to really 10x your life. I got to admit, when I first heard 10x anything, it was from Grant Cardone. He was like, you know, if your goal is to make $100,000 one year, you make $100,000, then you need to 10x it next year and try to make $1 million. You know, and that's kind of the way I thought about it, strictly linearly like that. until we started getting into this book. Who's the author of that book?
Benjamin Hardy. There's two authors. One of them is Benjamin Hardy.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the other guy's name.
Dan Sullivan, I think.
That's right.
I think that's
Sullivan, Benjamin Hardy. Yeah.
And the concept just blew my mind because actually I had a 2X mentality thinking about 10X, right? And just a real quick synopsis of it before we get into it is the 2X mentality is just doing more of what you're doing. Like if you want to make more money, then you just work harder or you work longer, and that's like you can double down on what you're doing. That's a 2X mentality. A 10X mentality really is a law of multiplication, and you get more results by doing less work, kind of, so to speak. So
yeah,
I'm kind of ready to get into that.
I think a lot of that, man, it's like a recurring theme in business, or maybe it's just me because it's my biggest downfall, but it's just focusing on the few things that matter more than everything else and cutting everything else out.
Yeah.
And I think most people, like you said, just continue to do the same thing, but that's rarely what's going to get you 10X better results, right? You can get a little bit further by doing the same thing, but you're not going to go 10X by doing the same thing. You're gonna have to cut out a lot of the things that you're doing, focus on the one thing that drives your business or your life more than the other stuff, and then focus on that thing. So,
and it is, like you said, it's a reoccurring theme because we see flashes of that in episodes we talk about, in conversations that we have. It's all interwoven within the fabric of success. This same message, this same recipe, ingredient to success is a 10X mindset, right? Finding one thing, focusing on one thing, cutting out everything else. And it is said and seen in a lot of different ways. But in the book, in the intro, they talked about Michelangelo, right?
Yeah.
That dude, I really enjoyed reading about Michelangelo, a world-renowned artist, did a lot of great things. But to actually see his story and see some of his body work and how he got to where he got to was phenomenal. And when he started, so when he first did the Hercules,
the David statue.
No, before that, when he was 19. Did you read the intro of the book?
I did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't remember what
you read the cliff
was.
notes. It was like, oh yeah, Michelangelo, Donatello, Leonardo. Oh yeah, the Ninja Turtles. That's what we're talking about. Which was a great cartoon back in the day, by the way. Yeah. Oh gosh. Man, I be trying to put my kids on it and watch it now. It's not the same. Yeah. Anyway, so with Michelangelo, he started out, and his first world-renowned sculpture was of Hercules, right? So before he got into doing Hercules, he started studying and trying to find cadavers so he could study and understand the human body.
Yeah.
Right? And just his obsession and what lengths he was willing to go to focus on this one thing, because he knew what he was trying to accomplish. So he had a very tangible type of attainable thing that was very quantifiable. It's like, I want to produce the best thing, this thing possible. So in order for me to do this, I need to focus and study this.
Yeah, I think this comes back to some stuff we talked about in the past, with like side hustles. Somebody who wants to, let's say you're making, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year right now, and you want to go to 100 or 200 or 300 or a million or whatever it is. I think it's interesting that the first thing that people look at a lot of times is side hustles. They want to see, like, okay, well, I could go and put this thing on Etsy and make $200 or $300 a week or whatever it is, And I think 99% of the time, all that's doing is it may increase your income by, a little bit, maybe 50%, which sounds like a lot, but not if you're trying to go to 10X, right? So if you're trying to go to 10X, what would you have to do? And I think that's a big key thing in the book. It forces you to focus on the most important thing, because you can't just like add a side income and then go to 10X. You've got to be like 100% focused, all in on the one thing that matters the most. And I think, excuse me, I think that people often get get sidetracked by these little side hustles. They get like their focus gets thrown off.
Mm-hmm.
So in reality, it's actually just wasting. Most people, it's just wasting your time.
Yeah.
This idea, but it's become popular because like it's pretty easy really to go online and make $100, a couple $100, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not really that easy to go online and make $50,000 a month as a side hustle. But pretty much anybody who's listening to this podcast could make $50,000 a month within a year or two if they really focused on the one thing that matters the most.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think it takes a little bit of work, because one of the key things you have to do is make sure whatever vehicle or whatever thing you're working towards is something that can be sustainable or scalable or something. Does that make sense? Like, there's some things that just aren't worth pursuing for big gains or for a lifestyle or for sustainability, right? Some things truly are side hustles, and you have to be able to recognize those things.
Yeah.
But I think most anything you do, you can make it a 10xable type of thing also. So, for instance, I talk to students and customers, potential students all the time that want to get into our real estate program, right? And a lot of them come from wholesaling. And they ask me, they say, hey, I want to get into real estate. I want to do some wholesaling. I want to make some money, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, how's that been going for you so far? Like, well, I'm up all the time looking at deals and doing this and doing that. And I've closed a couple of deals this year. I'm trying to close 10 this year. I'm like, okay, well, what happens after you close those 10? It was like, well, I'm just going to keep doing it. And like, all right, well, that sounds really transactional to me. So I got two options for you. One, you can either put that same energy towards building multifamily, and that vehicle just pay you forever. That's like a 10x type of thing, or you can try to 10x your wholesaling company, but you can't be the only person. You can't be the only contributor. You have to make it something. So what happens is you have to scale it back. So here's the analogy I like to use right here.
Yeah.
Is if you had 5 hours to cut down a tree, and you only have 5 hours, or if you had, let's just build a tree. I mean, cut down. Let's just say you had a week to build a house. Let's say that. All right, this is better. This is a better analogy. If you had a week to build a house, if I had a week to build a house, I would spend the first 2 days planning on how to build that house. Right. So I would do less work in the beginning. I would plan, get all my plans, everything, troubleshoot, all that stuff I need to do. So then on the third day, I can hit the ground running and just go ahead and build a house as efficiently as possible.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Instead of just going straight to work and just trying to make it happen as I go along. So the difference is a 10X mindset, I think, is a more focused mindset. It's a more efficient mindset. And in those first 2 days, I'm closing out everything, and I'm looking at everything. I'm focusing all my energy on this one thing and what I have to do to make sure that when I hit the ground running, it's gonna be a lot easier flow, and I can do all the hard work up front, type of thing. So even with people that are building their wholesaling companies, I'm like, okay, well, how about you hire someone to do A, someone to do B, someone to do C, so that way it's a machine instead of a hustle, right?
Yeah.
So I think you can 10X pretty much anything, but some things, I don't know, some things just are side hustles, But
yeah, well, I think you're right. I think pretty much anything that you choose, the vehicle doesn't matter as long as it's a decent industry and you're,
Yeah, maybe that's what I'm getting at. Yeah.
Yeah. You're probably not going to build a huge horse and carriage company right now, right? Maybe you could as an attraction, but you're not going to build like a cab service based on that probably.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think that pretty much anything that you're in though, you can definitely do it. You just have to be focused on that thing. And I think what happens is people have this job usually, or maybe a business or whatever, that they're not super happy with, not making the money they want to make. But they're the way out maybe, or the way to sort of, I don't know, expand in their minds is, well, I can make a few $100 extra a week by doing this side hustle, taking on this extra job or whatever. But if that's not going to be the main thing down the road, then usually it doesn't work out the way people think it will. or at least it doesn't make a huge difference. It kind of reminds me of people who like cut out coffee or like cut cable or whatever, you know, in order, like, I hear people talk about this a lot. I used to follow Dave Ramsey and, you know, do the Total Money Makeover stuff. And I would see this a lot. People will like, well, I can save $100 a month by cutting out cable or by not going to Starbucks, right? I can save $150, whatever it is. Well, that's cool, but like $100 is not changing your life. It's not. It's just you're not gonna save your way into a different life.
Right. That's
good. Not possible.
That's a bar.
So like you have to figure out ways to. Really, you have to focus on income. You have to 10x your income if that's what your goal is. So you can't 10x your income by cutting out $100 here, $100 there. It's not possible. So it's the same thing in business, right? And it's not possible for you to 10x your life by doing an Etsy side hustle that's going to make you a couple $100 a week. It's just not going to, unless that side hustle is going to become your main thing. I know people who have really successful Etsy stores,
right,
who make millions of dollars. And that's cool. Like, you can do that. But unless that's your goal, that Etsy store is probably taking your time and focus away from the thing that can get you to that point, right? I think this happens in real estate with wholesaling, actually, because wholesaling is attractive to people who don't have any money or experience. So it's like the entry-level thing in real estate, it seems like. And that's probably why it's so popular, because it seems like if you don't have any experience, you don't have any money, you don't know what you're doing, you can learn this skill. It's pretty simple to learn. It doesn't cost much money. It does actually cost money. People say that it doesn't cost any money, but that's not really true. You have to spend money on marketing if you want to be successful. You can do it for free. You might get lucky and stumble into a couple of deals, but you're not going to build a bigger company without that, right?
Right.
So that's what people do. They'll start driving around, look, and they might find one deal a year, one or two deals, and that's cool. You make 10 grand extra a year. That's fine if that's what your goal is. But if your goal is to get out of this $50,000 a year job and make $500,000 a year, it's not going to happen with that side hustle unless it becomes your main hustle and you build a big business around that thing. And you can build a big wholesaling business for sure.
Yeah.
But it makes more sense to me to jump into something like multifamily. And then, so that's what I did, right? So I went into, I had just sold a business, and that had kind of gone badly, actually, because it was a seller finance thing. And so I just basically closed the business down and wanted to get into multifamily. So I bought the first deal. I was working as a caddy. I was painting houses still, was doing that kind of stuff. And then I bought the next deal. And then within a year and a half, I was not having to do those other jobs anymore. And that became my main hustle. So like, it wouldn't make sense to me. This is another thing. People use rental properties as a side hustle, and that doesn't make any sense to me. People come in and, like, we talk to people a lot, and they're like, well, I just want to get, a house or two, whatever. I'm like, dude, a house or two is going to be a disaster.
That's still a liability right there.
That is, like, I don't understand that at all. Why would you want to buy a rental property, one rental property that makes you a few $100 a month? It makes no sense to me. Yeah, down the road, it might be worth $100,000 in 30 years, right? Or a couple $100,000. But like, just that doesn't make sense to me at all.
Yeah, you're right.
Like, the multifamily thing makes sense because it's so scalable, because you can get into it and you can scale that business right away, and it can become your main focus pretty quickly. But with houses, with a single family home, if you're going to buy 5 or 10 single family homes, that's probably not going to make a big difference in your life, right? Even if you bought 5 or 10. If you most people buy 1 or 2, and then they realize how bad it can get because they have one tenant, and that one tenant damages the house and then leaves it. They have to file an eviction.
And that's your profit for the year right there.
And that's, the whole, at least a year, maybe 3 or 4 years worth of profit that's gone right away. But if you got 100 of those units and one person does that, okay, well, that's okay, because you still got all this other money. You can fix that thing with 1 month's worth of rent. You can fix everything you need to fix, get it back re-rented, and now you're making profit again.
Right. So it sounds like to me the first thing that needs to change is, like, for a 10X lifestyle you have to have a 10X mindset. Like, you really do have to think differently. Your knee-jerk reactions to things have to be different. So I remember when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, the author of that book, blew my mind, because he would say stuff like this: if I wanted to buy a car, I would create an asset to pay for. So I'm not saying that's a 10X mindset. What I'm saying is he thinks differently, right? He's not saying, let me see what I can sell, let me see what I can pawn, or it's he elevated his thinking. So I think the first thing before we do anything else is we have to make space so that we can have room to think differently and think, because I think if most of us come from a poverty mindset, and it's borderline survival type of mindset. Even if you're middle class, you're still 3 paychecks away from being homeless, right? If you miss 3 paychecks, then most of us going to be on the street. And these just the numbers, statistics, like saving and stuff like that. I think we save a negative percentage of our money as opposed to other countries. It's wild. Credit cards, is a hell of a drug. You know what I'm saying? Credit card is a hell of a drug. But I think the first thing we have to do is make space in our minds, and so this is the first step of when we're talking about with 10X, when you have to focus on something and take other things out. I think we have to take out these old philosophies so that we can make space to focus on a higher way of thinking. And that stuff, we talk about it so much, but that stuff comes through education. Even if you can't be around certain people face to face, like mentors, or if you, whatever the situation is, you can read a book by this person. You can glean information. You can watch a video, and it really does rub off on you when you listen to people that are where you are trying to go. People that are smarter than you. You can elevate your everything, your IQ, your EQ, whatever, by just being around successful, smart, wise people. It's so important to read a book so that you can have a cheat code into expanding your mind, right? It's the best way to do it. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. And a lot of people once they're shown how to do something, they can pick it up really quickly. So don't try to I remember, this is really silly, but I remember there's so many things I try to do on my own, like try to cut my own hair, right? So, which is
my son does that.
Yeah. It's like once every 5 years, he just so I remember
right in the front. Too.
Yep. So everybody, because he's probably looking in the mirror. That's the first, or he's not looking in the mirror. That's the closest thing. It's just like, I can't tell you how many times. Like my son did that to my daughter one time. Yes. We came home and we saw this, what ended up being a trail of tears. It was a trail of hair that we saw. We was like, what in the world is going on? So I'm just like, oh my gosh. We come in there and they hide, and they got these little plastic school scissors, and a chunk of my daughter's hair. I'm just like, oh my gosh. Yeah, this is, I don't know. Why do siblings do that stuff? I don't know.
I don't know either.
I think we did that one. Me and my brother did that also one time. Yeah, it took a while.
Probably.
But it really is a cheat sheet into, so like once you see something done, like you can do it, but you have to be exposed to it. Read a book, right? Find out better ways of doing things. Be open to hear something different. You can't be so narcissistic, so prideful, so, I'm on an island. You don't have to, that's one of the biggest things, biggest reality checks I've had in my life. For the longest time, I didn't read books because I thought that real entrepreneurs or really successful people figure stuff out on their own. And that was the biggest lie I ever told myself.
Yeah.
A lot of people glean from other smart people that came before them. And that's okay. Read a book, get an idea from somebody else, and then go and do you.
Yeah, I think also it kind of reminds me of another point that I think a lot of entrepreneurs, people who think, who are trying to 10X their life, I guess, sort of think about, it's always something new. It's always like, what can I do differently? But it's not necessarily what can I do differently to get better in this thing that I'm doing. It's always like, well, there's another opportunity over here. Let me go try that. It kind of goes back to the side hustle thing too. It's like, it's always something else. Let me try this next thing, this other new thing, whatever it is. And I think the people who are most successful, one of the things I think about is, if you want to be really, really successful, if you want to like really 10X your income, your life, whatever, I think you have to put as much space as possible between you and the last thing you ever start. So like, let's say that my last thing is whatever, multifamily real estate. That's the thing. If I do that for 30 years, then I'm going to be way better than the person who is coming from these other things that they've done. They're only doing it for 1 or 2 or 3 years. They do everything for 3 or 4 years, and then they go to the next thing. And I think a lot of times people think, I've done this a lot. people think that, well, if I'm making 50 grand here, and then I have this other thing that I make 50 grand at, and then I have this other thing that I make 50 grand, and then this other thing that I make 50 grand, eventually it all adds up. But that's not how it works, actually. You just lose focus on this thing, and you make less here, and you make less here, and your focus is split up, and you would just wind up making the same amount of money that you would have made just with one thing. Mm-hmm. And if you would just have focused on that one thing, you could probably exponentially grow that one thing and make it 10x better, right? So let's take a barber, for instance. Your son cut your daughter's hair.
Yeah.
Let's say that you were, working at, like, let's say he wants to be a barber and he grows up. Okay. So he starts cutting people's hair. He's making $60,000 a year, let's just say. So let's say he wants to get to $600,000. He wants to 10x that. I think most barbers would say, okay, well, I'm a barber. There's only a limit to what I can make here. I can't cut more people's hair. So let me take this side hustle. Let me go do this other thing online, and maybe I can grow that, and then I can grow this other thing, whatever. But what if he just focused on building a business, a barbershop business,
right,
and bought this property and then had spaces where people could work, and then another one, and then you can grow this business. I don't even know how barbershops work. It's just an example. But you can probably grow a barbershop business to where you can make that much money. And then you can cut hair if you want to or not. But you have this business that's feeding you, and it's the same business that you're already in. You can probably focus on hiring people, on doing other things, and maybe cutting hair is something you have to give up in order to grow to that thing if you want to. But I think a lot of people who are in businesses like that, or maybe they have like a construction business or whatever, and they're like, well, construction can only take me so far. Let me go do this other thing, because they're not thinking about how to build teams and how to build systems and how to build this business and make it a bigger business.
Right. That's good, man. So that's the thing. I love that. There's a term, and I'm sure this kind of, goes through all like type of industries, but there's a phrase, a saying in chess that says it's better for you to play one opening 1,000 times than 1,000 openings one time, right? So what you're saying is kind of like really get into, and this is where I like to think about it. When you're in an industry, when you're in any kind of position in life or anything, there's seasons, right? And a lot of times people give up the first time a cold season comes, and it's like, and then they move on to the next thing, and it's something else. When it comes to doing businesses, sometimes you hop into a spring season, you come off and you make money real good. It's like, oh, okay, this is great. Everything, I'm a genius. And then the next season comes this summer. It's like, oh, okay, whatever, it got kind of hot. And then, winter eventually comes, because that's just the cycle of life. Like, there's always going to be a winter season, but you have to understand how things work and stuff. And as long as at the beginning, like with going back to my house analogy, spending 2 days to make a blueprint, then you can prepare for certain situations. You can look far enough ahead and understand, okay, at some point I'm gonna have to have some other people come in and help me with some of these with this foot or with this foundation. Yeah. Then I got some sheetrock coming in. It's gonna be a lot of dust and stuff like that. So I can't do this portion of it. You see what I'm saying? So like, I think that's why I love your barbershop analogies, because it's like, all right, instead of me trying to go and do 100 different things, let me just really focus on what I need to do within this and ride these seasons out and make the most out of each season. There might be a season, like you said, that I might have to get out of the industry to grow my industry, right? And then there will be other seasons where I'll be in there building and doing different things, because different seasons produce different things in their time. Right. You have to understand what it takes. But if you can scale back a little bit, make a blueprint, a 10X blueprint that's going to produce $600,000, which was what you're working for, then at the end of the day, I think a lot of people get tired also is because for a lack of planning, right? Because when you're on the go trying to figure stuff out, that's stress.
Yeah.
When you don't plan for stuff, you could be doing a simple task, right?
Yeah.
And you could be in your house trying to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And if you can't find silverware and the refrigerator's open and you got a little bit of peanut butter and your hand getting out, the knuckles getting peanut butter, it's like, But if you would have looked through the cupboards and everything first and got everything out all at once and then did what you had to do, it would have been a lot easier situation, right? So I think planning to be successful is the first step of being successful, is getting everything out in front of you, going through the scenarios, going through the factors and stuff, and then kind of going from there, right?
Yeah.
So, so it's just staying in it, understanding what it takes, and then and just not being afraid to kind of go deep and really, and that's where the hard work comes in that we talk about all the time, between working hard and I can't remember how you put it, but
versus hustle.
Yeah, and then just also like your mental acuity and stuff is like, just like everything is not going to be easy. Some stuff is going to take some like, I need to figure this out. And sometimes you have to go to other sources to figure things out. Sometimes you have to talk to other successful barbers. Sometimes you have to watch a YouTube video. Sometimes you have to go into other people's shops and see kind of what they got going on, what they do.
Yeah.
You know, all that stuff is important. And bringing it back to Michelangelo, he knew he wanted to make the greatest sculpture of Hercules that he could. So his game plan was like, okay, in order for me to make 600,000, in order for me to make the best Herculean sculpture that I can, I'm gonna have to build out a blueprint. What's the most important thing? There's certain things about this sculpture that I'm trying to bring out. There's certain things that I don't know.
Yeah.
What do I need to do to be better? Right? He studied real bodies. And he was like, I need to see as many as I can. And at some point, I think he said it was even illegal for him to be going to certain places and touching dead bodies.
Sneaking into like to like the mortician or whatever it was called.
Yeah.
What back then.
Yeah.
I don't know how they did stuff, but
yeah.
Finding dead bodies, digging up stuff.
Digging up dead bodies and everything. But he was obsessed with his bigger picture. You know, he had a vision. He had something that he wanted to bring forth out of that stone, out of that whatever, and he knew the work that it took to get there,
right?
And that's what he did, at no matter the cost. And then he did that thing, and then he wanted to go a little bit further. So and then eventually, you know, he got to the King David and some other stuff, but he had to keep 10Xing himself in order to make a more refined version of his product. But the first thing that had to be refined was him, right? So he had to 10X who he was every time. So he was willing to do the work.
Yeah. I think you also mentioned the mindset thing. I think one thing that most people probably think about when they're not necessarily in business is just something that I've thought about a lot. But I think a lot of entrepreneurs think this way, or people who are afraid to become entrepreneurs or afraid to 10X their lifestyle, whatever, is this idea of like a scarcity mindset versus an abundance mindset. I think people don't realize what potential there is out there, and so they feel stuck in this, whatever their lifestyle is, and they don't feel like they can really move forward. So then this idea of like a side hustle or something that's going to make you a couple $100 extra bucks a month or a week or whatever seems like a good idea, because, you know, making $10,000 extra dollars a week seems impossible. And so I think that's one of the things that people have to get out of this idea that, you know, there's a limit to whatever it is that you're doing. Or maybe there's a limit in that vehicle, but there's not necessarily a limit to what can be possible in the right vehicles. So, yeah, you can only make a certain amount cutting hair, right? But in that business, there's probably people making millions of dollars.
Absolutely.
So, how did they get there? What needs to happen for them to get there? And I think there's also this idea that people have that I think causes a lot of turmoil, I guess, in, you know, people think that if you're successful, then you're taken from somebody else, right? There's this scarcity mindset when it comes to money. It's like, well, if this barber's making $500,000 a year, he's taking away my portion of the pie, right? This piece of the pie. And I think it's just not how money works. It's not how business works at all. You know, think about like we talked about, I mentioned horse and carriages earlier, right? Yeah. So we talked about this kind of with AI. Like whenever cars were invented, people thought, you know, man, it's going to put all these people out on the streets who run these horse and carriage companies and who, you know, drive these carriages or whatever. But what happened was cab companies were created. So there was still opportunity in the same industry. It just changed a lot, right? It changed. It became a different thing. Well, think about Uber. So Uber was created not that long ago, in the cab companies lost their minds because they thought, well, this is going to put cab companies out of business. And I'm sure that happened to some degree, but we were talking about Uber this weekend, and what happens is now it's so much easier to basically get a cab by going on the app and just finding an Uber. It's so much easier to do that way more people do it. So it's not that they took all the business away. What happened was they increased the industry. And now there's way more people who do it because it's so much easier.
That's good.
So I've never been in a cab before. I probably will use Uber at some point. I have never done that. But I think that's a situation where, like, somebody like me, I would never call a cab company. I probably would never do that, but I would definitely go on and get an Uber, right? So I think that's what happens in a lot of places. You wind up growing this thing. I think people think that, like, if you have this piece of the pie, then I can't get that piece of the pie too. But in a lot of ways, money is almost infinite. Like, and that's not necessarily a good thing, but there's like almost unlimited amounts of money for people to get. It's not, nobody is taking your piece of the pie.
Right.
So, like, there's no reason for you to be upset about somebody being successful. There's no reason for you to think that you can't grow to a certain point. It's just there's an unlimited amount of resources almost available for pretty much anybody who is willing to have the right mindset and then put in the work that's necessary to get there.
Bro, absolutely.
And the focus.
And that's it, because there's always going to be supply and demand, right? Like, people are always, so let's just say someone, McDonald's, let's just say they are making $1 trillion in the fast food space. Oh man, they got the industry on lock. Okay, well, everybody doesn't like hamburgers, or everybody might not like their hamburgers. That's them making $1 trillion. It isn't stopping you from opening up a restaurant or a food truck.
Yeah. If McDonald's had never existed, then Chick-fil-A probably would never have existed either.
That's a good point.
So it's not that McDonald's made it impossible for Chick-fil-A. It's just that they built an industry and that industry wasn't there before.
Yep.
And so now there's more opportunity.
There is, yeah. But and that goes with anything and everything. But you're right. But that's one of the first mentalities that has to go.
Yeah.
Is there's not enough room for me. Nope. That's not. But that's a real thought process that people have.
I think that's very common. I think people see people who are not living the life that they want to live in whatever way. They see somebody who is doing that and they have animosity towards that person because they think, well, this person's taking away my opportunity. But that's never the case. Never. So we've talked about the idea that in real estate, your competitors it's like they're not really taking anything from you. We like, anytime somebody will stop by my office, ask me questions about being a landlord or whatever, people come in and ask, like, how do you handle this application process or whatever? And I always try to help them out as much as possible because they're not taking anything from me. It doesn't matter if they get better at the business. It doesn't hurt me necessarily. Maybe we have the same property that we're trying to get and they get the property instead of me, but that's okay. There's millions more for us to get. It's like, it's just not, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things. I think one of the ways that this has changed for me, I guess, over the last 10 years or so, is that I used to think, like, if I have an employee who learns everything that I know, then they just go out and start their own business, and then that hurts me, right? I think a lot of employers think that way. So they, like, don't give all the information necessarily to their employees. It's always like, well, you just do this part of the job, and then that's it. But I think this idea of having people come in and we talk about what their goals are and we figure out what they're trying to do, and then our job is just to coach and help them get to that point. They're going to give the business everything they have too, right? So I think that's one of the ways that employers can sort of better their companies is by giving everything that they can to their employees. And then if that employee goes out and starts another business, that's okay. It's not going to hurt them in the long run. I think I kind of, Gary Vee talks about this a lot, right? He has people who come in and their goal is to start and advertising agency, and they're coming to learn everything that they can about that business from him because he runs a really large one, right? And I think he could just say, no, I don't want that. I want somebody who's going to be an employee forever or whatever. But that's not what he does. He was like, all right, well, you got, 3 years or however long before you start this business. So let me teach you everything I can while you're here, and you're going to be a better and better employee the entire time. I'm going to get a lot more out of this person from my business, and then they're going to be able to go out and do their thing. And it's an abundance mindset. It's not, there's not scarcity in this market. It's okay if this person does that. And I think that's one of the things that's helped me too, is just thinking like, okay, it's cool if this person comes in, learns everything from me, and then goes out and does it on their own. It's not that big of a deal. We can work together. We can figure out ways for that to be a harmonious thing down the road.
Man, and see that right there, that is something that has to be developed for most people, right? Like that abundance mindset, because I think a 2X mindset is like, I'm gonna teach you everything you know, but I'm not gonna teach you everything I know,
right?
Type of thing.
Yeah,
it's because it's there's only. This town ain't big enough for the both of us,
right?
Type of thing,
right?
Like, nope, that's not the case. Actually, having 2 restaurants in the city means competition. That's a really good thing. Competition is a good thing, right? But that abundance mind, and that's a sign of a mature and secure entrepreneur and a wise entrepreneur to really invest into your people. That's a 10X mindset, to really take the time, focus on. Because really, you're focusing on your company by focusing on your people, right? You're gonna get, like you said, you're gonna get the best out of them. That's a whole 10X mindset. Get them everything, pour it out. I believe you can't get poured back into unless you pour everything out, right?
Right. Well, there's another example with this whole mindset thing. I think is we had a business where we sold like portable storage buildings and stuff. And a couple of years ago, we were trying to open a new one in a new city, and we had some issues with like, government ordinances and stuff. But when we were looking for places, the place that we found was like right by another company that did the exact same thing. It was right across the street. And then there was another one down the road that was very similar. They're all kind of real close to each other. And so I was talking to the guy who was like the corporate guy that we were working with, where we got these buildings from. And I was asking him about that. And he said, well, this company, the guy who runs this company started doing this, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, like a long time ago. And he said what he would do is go into a town and find the other companies and try to get right next to them. And it's not because he's trying to take their like customers or whatever, but if you have 3 or 4 or 5 of these places in the same area, then what happens is everybody comes to that area to shop.
To the marketplace,
right? So instead of putting one on this side of town and one over here on the other side of town, what happens then is you get this neighborhood over here that's close to this one goes there, and this neighborhood goes there. But if you put them all side by side, now everybody comes to this one location. So it actually helps the whole industry.
The whole industry, yeah. That's awesome.
So that competition helps. You see this, like, I don't know nationally if this is a thing, but where we are locally, mobile home dealerships are like that. They're all kind of in this one area in one city. And so everybody goes there to shop for mobile homes. So we thought about opening a mobile home dealership when I had my mobile home license. And we were a little bit worried, actually, about being the only one in town, because people aren't traveling from out of town possibly to come to this one place. But they'll travel from out of town to go to 10 different dealerships, right? So you get a lot more concentration of people shopping for these things.
Yeah, it's almost like you want to start 2 of them and name them something like, name one of them blue mobile homes and one of them red mobile homes.
Right, right.
It's like Home Depot and Lowe's. Most of the time they're close to each other.
Always right beside each other. Yeah, I don't know what their strategy is for that, but it seems like something similar, right?
Yeah, I think there's a backstory to that. Like, somebody's daughter wanted to be in the company. They wouldn't let him in, so they went and started the other entity type of thing. Yeah, so, you hear about stuff like that with Ferrari and Lamborghini and stuff. I don't know. We have to fact check this stuff. But real quick though, we talk about numbers. Have you guys been keeping up with how many jobs or how many businesses Keith had? He was like, I sold a portable storage.
I had a bunch of them.
Yeah, he was like, I'm counting over here. I'm like, we need to keep like a little counter over here.
Yeah. I told you that's always been my downfall, right? I always am like, well, this is a good opportunity. Let me chase that.
Let
me do this. Let me do that. Right. So now I'm trying to just put as much distance between me and the last company that I started.
Yeah.
So like, or as much time, right? So that's the thing. Just narrow that focus down to one thing. This is actually a good topic. Okay. I was driving around with business partner of mine the other day, and we were looking at property, and he helps me with my mobile home park that I just closed on recently, and we're trying to grow this rental portfolio again because I sold most of it last year, almost all of it. So I'm just building that portfolio back up, and we're looking at this property that's adjacent to property that I own. I have like 30 acres in this mobile home park, and about half of that's not developed at all. And then beside it, there's another 15 acres. And I was like, oh, this would be a good piece of land for me to get and develop all of this and make all of this either one big mobile home park or one big apartment complex. So it'd be like another 30 acres for me to develop. And
nice.
It was a family-owned land, so it's the brother of the person I just bought this property from. So I've been kind of talking to this guy about buying the property, and we were kind of just bringing that back up. And on that property is a mobile home dealership. They rent 5 acres of the 15 from this guy. And I was telling my business partner, I was like, man, I'd love to have that property, and then I would have control of that mobile home dealership, and I could probably buy that dealership as well because I would own the land underneath it. It's a little bit of the McDonald's story. But I don't know why they don't buy that land. I don't understand why they're renting that land for like 30 years now. They've been renting that land, and the guy probably would sell it. I'm pretty sure I can get him to sell it to me. I don't know why they haven't bought that anyway. Maybe they just don't want the rest of it. I don't really know. But anyway, when we were driving by there, I was like, I'd love to have that dealership. You know, that's a great business. I was going to get into that business at one time, and it just didn't work out because of the local ordinances and all the stuff that we were going to have to do in order to make it work. It just didn't make sense. But here in this town, obviously this place does well. I've talked to the owner. I know that they do pretty well. And I think it would be a good business to purchase. And he was like, but doesn't that take your focus away from multifamily? I was like, you're right.
That's good.
You're right. It does. So I have to get rid of that idea and just focus on, if we get this land, then we'll develop this part of the land, maybe even move that dealership off of there and develop that part of the land too. But the focus needs to be on multifamily.
And that's what I was about to ask you. Like, so I was going to ask you, what are you doing to 10X your businesses now? And that's one of the things, to just staying focused on this one thing right here, right?
That's it. Focus on growing that portfolio. So that's going to be the big thing. Just not getting distracted by these other opportunities, because that business, you could build a huge mobile home dealership business, right? I'm sure.
And that's Clayton, a distraction right there.
Well, Warren Buffett bought Clayton a few years back, right? And he probably makes tons and tons of money off of that. There's a great market for that. It's a good vehicle if that's what you're going to do, but you got to pick one thing. If that's your vehicle, do that thing, and then get rid of the multifamily, or at least as an active investor in that, right? You can always invest passively in that stuff. But for me, if I'm going to be the active investor, if I'm going to be the one who runs and acquires and runs these properties, then I can't focus on running a mobile home dealership too, right? It's got to be one or the other.
And that's the formula. Earlier you talked about, the guy makes $50,000. Let's just say the barber again makes $50,000, and he's like, all right, well, the other side get to make $50,000. You do that 5 times. All right, now I'm at $250,000. Or you can put all your eggs in this one basket to make that a $250,000 business, and then have someone run that, and then you can go to the next endeavor. As long as your focus is still in one area, type of thing. You
can own multiple businesses that way if you've got somebody to run it, but really it needs to be really big, I think. Because you've got to be able to pay a CEO who's going to make $200,000-$400,000 a year to run that business. I think a lot of people think that they can do that with their business that they make $100,000 on, and I don't think that's possible. It's probably possible sometimes, but I think it's very rare for that to actually be a thing. I think what usually happens is they try to hire somebody to run their company, and they're paying them $50,000 or $60,000 a year, and they're getting a $50,000 or $60,000 employee, not a $400,000 employee, and those are different, especially when in terms of running a business. You're not going to have a CEO who's run and been successful with multiple 7, 8, 9-figure businesses and pay them $50,000 to come in and run that business. It's not going to work. So you're going to wind up with somebody that you still have to manage, that you still have to take care of. And then they're not going to be able to expand and grow that business like you want them to. So what's going to happen is your attention is still going to be there, and then the new thing is going to get half of your attention, instead of all of your attention. So then what happens is the first business starts to suffer, And then the second business suffers because you're not focused on either one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So you wind up with the same income you had before.
Mm-hmm.
When if you had just focused on that one business, you could have grown it to the point eventually where you could have somebody come in and you can remove yourself as much as possible. And then you have people who are, who own multiple companies, and they're like, they have, or maybe they have like a firm or whatever, a private money firm that comes in and they run these business, but it's not the same business structure as most small business owners have. It's a whole different thing.
So yeah, that's what I was speaking to. The numbers weren't so important to me, but the numbers are important. So yeah, so the formula is to grow your thing big enough so that you can hire somebody, but I guess my numbers were too small, So it has to. So like you said, it depends on what your industry is and what it would cost to hire somebody to run that well in that industry. So instead of trying to do five different side hustles, get it big enough so that if you need to be making $2 million at this barbershop, with all your different barbers and chairs and all that stuff like that, and you can throw somebody in there to make $300,000-$400,000, and then if you got other endeavors that you want to work on, then you can walk away knowing that it's in good hands, type of thing.
Well, let's think about let's go back to the McDonald's and Chick-fil-A analogy.
Okay.
So think about how well your local McDonald's is run.
Not that well.
How do you feel when you walk in there? How do you feel about the way that it's managed?
Well, you already know, depending on what, most of the time in the mornings, they're going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go at night to McDonald's, it's a wrap.
Their ice cream machine's broken.
Listen,
you're not going to get what you ordered.
Their system is going to be down.
Somebody's going to be yelling at you.
Yeah, the fries going to be
it's not good.
Awful.
Well, most McDonald's, I'm guessing, I don't know, but I'm guessing that most McDonald's, the owner of that company is not, the owner of that franchise is not there working, right? Mm-hmm. They're not the one who's there running that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, what'd you say, Russ? Oh, really? He worked. Okay, so producer Russ over there, young Russ, he says that he worked at McDonald's and the owner wasn't there. So I think that's probably very, very typical, and they still make good money because their branding is crazy. They've been around for almost 100 years now,
50s,
60 years, 70 years,
50s or 60s,
80 years, something like that. Yeah. So that says something. That's a whole different discussion.
Golden Arches, man.
But think about the efficiency with which each McDonald's is run. Probably not very good.
Mm-hmm.
Now compare that to Chick-fil-A. When you go in Chick-fil-A. Mm-hmm. You know that it's run well. I've never been in one that's not. I'm sure they exist, but it's probably much more rare than a McDonald's that's not run well. So the difference, I think, a big difference is that Chick-fil-A requires their owners, their franchise owners, to come in and actually manage the business. Right? They have to be an active participant.
Right.
So I don't even know if they allow. Russ, can you look up and see if Chick-fil-A allows multiple their owners to own multiple stores? I think that they might, I think there's some regulations they have in place about that.
Yeah, you got to work a certain amount of hours there, I think, right?
Yeah, Chick-fil-A has much more hands-on management from the owner. Now they can hire a GM to run that, right? They can hire somebody, but then there's all the corporate overseeing, the oversight of those stores. So over time, you have to be there for a certain amount of time, right? Yeah, to open more of them. So I think that's a huge difference. And you think about the attention that the owner has on that business, and I think that is a big deal with the efficiency that these things run. So can you look up profitability on Chick-fil-A versus a McDonald's on average? Mm-hmm. I'm interested to see. I bet
and that's a good point. Like, Chick-fil-A has definitely 10X. That's the 10X fast food restaurant, right?
Oh, I think so, yeah. I want to see what the numbers are, but I think that Chick-fil-A is actually the most profitable per store, right? Even though they lose billions of dollars every year by not being open on Sunday.
Right.
Which is another thing that we could go into, because I think the idea of sticking with your core values and what that is a thing that affects your business in a positive way, even if you lose money. I think that is something that builds efficiency because of the people that you can have in place and the
that's true
impact you can make with
but
that
the
stuff.
money they can make on, you know how many times we drove to Chick-fil-A
I
after
know.
church?
I know. I know.
I can eat your nuggets every day.
Yeah.
Chick-fil-A. But yeah, but so what I'm getting at while he's finding those numbers, we got the numbers.
I don't have specific numbers.
We need to get Russ a microphone.
Yeah, we got to get him a microphone.
But Chick-fil-A per store is definitely more profitable
Chick-fil-A is more profitable per store. I think so too.
as an organization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Per unit.
McDonald's has so many franchises, but
Chick-fil-A's like in the top 20.
mm-hmm.
The franchises, McDonald's is number 1.
Yeah.
That discrepancy doesn't keep each store from making more per unit.
Right. Each store makes more per unit, yeah. Than
And per
McDonald's.
day though, what they make per day?
Then McDonald's, Starbucks, and Subway combined.
More. Okay, hang on. So Chick-fil-A makes more per restaurant than McDonald's, Subway, and Starbucks combined. Is that what you said?
December 18th, 2022.
Wow.
That's crazy.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So hold on. Here's the thing. The reason why it's crazy is you talking about per store.
Just per store.
That's crazy.
I would bet there's probably a lot of reasons why that is, but
Yeah.
I would bet one of the main reasons is the focus of the person who's in charge.
Mm-hmm.
Is the person who has equity in the company, the person who's the partner, who is the owner of that company, is focused on how well the store is managed versus somebody who maybe buys 10 McDonald's stores or opens 10 McDonald's stores at one time, and they're they can still make it work, and they're probably going to make a lot of money, but there's going to be a lot of inefficiency there because focus is split.
And that's a great example of 10x versus 2x. The franchise the franchise owner that has 10 McDonald's is like, I can make 10 times more money, but I have to open 10 more 10 more McDonald's, versus the Chick-fil-A is like, I'm just going to focus all of my attention here and make 10 times more money in this one store type of thing. That's a classic. So he's doing less work, right?
The first time I heard this actually was from Alex Hormozy when I was in Gym Launch. I was a customer in Gym Launch, and I had a gym that was so inefficient whenever we first started there, and even when we, after we ran it for a little while, still there was tons of money being left on the table because of the inefficiencies there. And Alex actually told the owners, we would have these calls, and he said most people want to get their gym to a certain efficiency level and then open another one. And he was like, I'm going to tell you that that's almost never the right thing to do. Most of the time, you can build a gym that's going to make as much as your 2 gyms because of the focus you have on this one. If you just focus on this one and you build it, you can build $1 million a year business there. Or you can open another one, but you're probably going to have a lot of trouble breaking $500,000 in each one. And he was like, you're going to wind up with more headache with the same and making the same amount of money than if you would just focus on one store, one gym, and build it to its capacity. And you're never going to be at 100%. There's never 100% efficiency, but you can get a lot farther with that one probably than you can with 2. Because what happens is they're going to hire a manager, somebody to run this gym, and they're not going to do they're not going to treat it the same way that you would. And then that second gym, it's the same thing. And then you're split between 2 and then 3 and however more you try to open.
Yep.
And so in this example that we have, I think somebody who goes out and opens 10 McDonald's stores might only make what 1 or 2 or 3 Chick-fil-A's make because everything is split, right? Their attention is split. It's like 2 to 1, actually. Yeah. So there you go. So somebody's like, well, I'm going to open McDonald's, and then I'm going to open another one and another one and another one. They're going to wind up with probably 10x the money invested and not nearly the efficiency. I think that the focus is an important part of that. There's probably a lot of other reasons, but I think that there is an important thing when you focus on this one thing, the one thing that's most important, then you can really 10x whatever it is that you're doing because your focus is on that one thing.
And it's funny that you said 10x the investment also, because I remember when I looked at both these models some years ago, it cost either $5,000 or $10,000 to start a Chick-fil-A and $1 million to start a McDonald's. Like, literally, you know what I'm saying? So
there's a Chick-fil-A has a different structure in their franchises. So I think they take a huge percentage. I don't remember what it is, but it's like maybe 15% or something. It's really big. And then, you know, the owner makes typically a couple $100,000 or whatever. So, you know, that structure is a lot different. But I think that, you know, the efficiency level in a Chick-fil-A is
because
crazy.
and I always find myself asking, I'm like, why don't McDonald's, Arby's, Burger King send all their people to the CEOs of operations or the COOs of Chick-fil-A and train their people? Like that would be, if I started McDonald's, the first thing I do as a McDonald's owner is go to Chick-fil-A and say, hey, you know what I'm saying, take me to your leader, you know.
Well, I think 10K versus 500K.
It's 500 for McDonald's now?
Yeah.
Okay. It used to be $1 million, I thought, but okay. Yeah.
So you could start a Chick-fil-A with $10,000. I think it's very hard to get in. I think you have to there's like an application process.
It's a lot of criteria. I tried it. Yeah.
You tried
Didn't
it.
qualify. That was the old me.
But you can put 10K in and make 2 times more than a McDonald's owner who put $1 million or 500,000 in.
Bro, the return on investment and the return on identity are
Yeah.
far better with Chick-fil-A, you know.
But a big part of that's because of the focus of on efficiency and building this thing versus how many McDonald's are there in the world versus how many Chick-fil-A's are there? I bet that's a huge difference.
At one point, McDonald's had the most real estate in the world.
Yeah.
And then Chick-fil-A, and then Subway did at one point also. So between McDonald's and
Subway has a bunch of stores.
And both of them had the most real estate in the world on their own at different times in their existence. But it's probably not even close. Not even to Chick-fil-A. Yeah. Yeah.
41,000
So McDonald's has 38,000 McDonald's. Subway has 41,000, and it's probably like 100 Chick-fil-A's. Right? 2,600.
Yeah. So they're like 7% of the stores.
Okay, so let's break this down a little bit more. So you talk about the qualifications in order for you to even be able to buy a Chick-fil-A, start a Chick-fil-A franchise, but then also there are certain qualifications and criteria that has to be met for location and everything. So going back to my original analogy at the beginning of the show, if I had a week to build a house, I'm gonna spend 2 days game planning for it. Chick-fil-A does a whole bunch of a lot of prep. They're looking at a whole lot of criteria. Say what is gonna give us the best chance to be successful, right? That's what qualifications do you have to own a Chick-fil-A? Where we're gonna put them? Why we're gonna put them there? What type of like all this criteria they spend, as opposed to McDonald's is like, give us $500,000, go to Hamburg University, open up your McDonald's. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm sure they got some other training and stuff like that too. But they spent a day planning. Chick-fil-A spent 2 or 3 days planning, and then look who's more efficient.
Right.
Look who's more profitable. It's a 10x versus 2x, clear as day. Illustration right there. But I have a question for you though. Okay. What say you, Mr. Hand, to people like our producer over here who has multiple gifts and has multiple desires? Let's just say he wants to be a barber and also have a landscaping company. How do we navigate through these type of situations with the 10X mindset?
So, this is a good question. I think that you have to pick one. I think you got to pick one avenue, whatever that is.
Very unpopular answer. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's what you have to do if you want to get to a 10X sort of, lifestyle. It depends on there's something to be said about what your goals are. And if that's not your goal, if your goal is to just, be average or whatever that it is, that's okay. It doesn't matter. But if your goal is to go to 10X your life in whatever capacity that means, maybe that's financially or whatever in business, then you have to focus on whatever that one thing is. Now, down the road, once you get to a certain level, maybe you can branch that out. But I think when you're starting out, if you want to go 10X, you got to narrow your focus down. So you got to pick one. If you want to be a graphic designer and a landscaper, then you got to choose which one you want. But either one of those vehicles is fine. I know somebody who has, I don't know what his company makes, got to be tens of millions of dollars, landscaper. And then I'm sure there are, graphic companies that do the same thing, right? You can choose one of those, but you got to choose one. You're probably not going to get anywhere close to that if your attention is split between those two. Yeah. So,
bro, that's a good answer. That's some real perspective, because you think about people that are a lot more talented, smarter, have more resources than we do. So the greatest example I can think of is like Michael Jordan, right? That dude was the GOAT in basketball, greatest ever. I don't care what nobody say. Kobe what, LeBron who, it don't matter. And then so you would think someone with that much competitive drive and everything, and that he would be great at anything. And then he tried to go play baseball, right? Like he was probably if he had that much of a desire to play baseball this late in his career, he was probably passionate about it the whole time to some degree, right?
But he didn't go out and practice basketball or baseball.
He didn't. He chose one, and he got his stock up to a certain. He was like, all right, I'm gonna go 3 championships, whatever. Da 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 da. Now let me go start this other business called baseball. Was not great.
Nope.
You know what I'm saying?
But if he I don't know how good he was at baseball growing up, but if he had focused on baseball, he probably could have been just as good.
Maybe, yeah. But so what you say, so that's a good example. So there's a reason why I believe we don't see Hall of Famers in 2 sports, right? Because it's and the reason why I said your answer was very unpopular, just because it's unpopular doesn't mean it's not good, doesn't mean it's not right. I think a lot of times we envision ourselves, but the reality is there are certain secrets and formulas and flows of life that just show you statistically you can be great at one or mediocre at 2.
Right.
You know, like one adage we should always hear in football was like when you have like training, when you have spring training and then you trying out quarterbacks and stuff like that. And it was like, all right, we're going to go with the 2 quarterback system this year. And they always say, if you have 2 quarterbacks,
you don't have a quarterback.
You don't have one.
Yep.
Right?
That was us in high school.
Yeah, that was us.
A 2-headed monster.
Two-headed monster, yeah.
It was like a 2-headed gecko.
Yeah. But let the record show that Keith went to the crosstown rival school his senior year, and we beat them.
That's true.
He could never. So he beat me in golf Father's Day. That's my gift
I've been
to you.
taking it out on you in golf for the last 20 years.
But I can talk about us beating you our senior year forever.
That's true. That's true.
So anyway, that's good stuff. But yeah, so Michael Jordan, prime example.
Yeah.
People like even Deion Sanders and Bo Jackson. Deion Sanders was great at football, and he was a good baseball player.
Yeah.
Would never be a Hall of Fame. Bo Jackson was great at football. I don't know how good he was at baseball, but if he would have just focused on one, he probably could have been the GOAT at either one of those. And then he had injuries and stuff like that. But so that's a good way to look at it. It's like it's unpopular to say you have to choose one, but if you really want to be successful, if you really want to 10x your life, you do have to choose one.
So let me play devil's advocate on that a little bit, not necessarily, but
okay.
But I do think that like if Bo Jackson wants to be the best football player to ever play, he probably has the focus on football.
Mm-hmm.
But for him, if he wants to play baseball and football because he enjoys playing both, then that's totally fine. That's his goal, and he gets to that goal. Mm-hmm. That's fine. But he has to give up being the best at one or the other.
If his goal is to be the best.
Right. He has to give up that goal if he wants to do both, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I think now, just because we're talking about this, I want to bring up the idea that kids really focus on one of those things. Yeah. Because of that same mindset. I don't think that's the best way to do it.
I don't think it's the best way to do it either, yeah.
Once you become a professional, then that's different. Mm-hmm. But I think, growing up, you're probably better off building athleticism and building a love for sports in general, whatever, playing multiple things growing up. But then there's a certain point, and I think it's probably not until professional level.
Mm-hmm.
I think now kids start that at like 10 or 11, which is crazy. You know, when I was growing up, I played football basically just to stay in shape for baseball and just because I enjoyed it. But I was a baseball player. That's what I did, right? That was the only thing I was really serious about. Mm-hmm. But that football time didn't take away from that growing up. Mm-hmm. But at a certain point, it starts to. Right?
Yeah.
Now, when I got to college, baseball in college was a lot different than baseball in high school, and especially at a better college than where I started. Mm-hmm. But like the schedule was crazy. I don't know how you would do both, but there were some people who did. So you could, I guess, do both, but it would be very difficult. But on a professional level, it's probably not possible really to be the best at both. You can still do both. When we were growing up, there was a lot of people who did 2 sports at the professional level, and they were pretty good players. Deion Sanders is one of the best football players ever, right?
Charlie Ward.
Yeah. Brian Jordan was a really good Falcon and Brave.
That's crazy.
There was a lot of people like that. Bo Jackson was really good at both. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But to be the best at either one, you probably got to give one of those up at some point in your career.
So here's something else to think about, too, when you're evaluating, because, if it's something that you're passionate about, like being a barber, or being a landscaper. You know, you probably have to choose one if you want to be great. But I think the conversation changes a little bit, and you really have to look at why you want to do what you want to do. So for me, I was a massage therapist for years, and I believed that I was doing that because I needed to bring that entity to the world. Like, it was important. It was important. It wasn't just something I liked doing. I think it was important. I think that's one of the things that I was meant to do, was bring healing that way, and bring and not just physical, but also like listening to people, having, it was like a mini therapy, not licensed or nothing like that, but you know, it's the whole thing, you know, helping people physically, mentally, and stuff like that, right? And I did that because I believe that entity needed to exist. And let's just say I was a barber also. Or I did remodeling also kind of simultaneously. I did that just to really because I made most of my money doing remodeling and stuff like that. And the massage therapy was something I enjoyed doing and viewed as important. Now, if I could do it all over again, I probably would have put all of my eggs in the massage therapy basket and grown that entity and made sure, because if that's what I thought was important and like purposeful, then I would have duplicated myself. I would have spent my energy finding people and 10x that company from the inside out. And like, hey, look, my DNA is going to be 100 people wide, and we're going to do this because this is what's important. This is my purpose in the earth. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of when I had the fitness company. When I started in fitness, it was a long time ago now, but we started a fitness company. I had somebody else who did sales, and then I did the actual training. But you can only take so many clients. At some point, you can't take any more, right? So, so we got to that point because we were successful with that. We got to the point where my schedule was full, and now we need somebody else. So we started hiring people, and then I started thinking about the idea that if I can build a really good system for these trainers to come in and be good trainers to help people, then I can have hundreds of clients versus one, so I can actually help a lot more people.
That's it.
By doing it that way.
And that's what I'm getting at right there is, if you really believe in what you're doing is supposed to be here, then you want to try to reach as many people as possible.
Thing. But it's likely that even with something like that, the quality of care that those people are getting is probably less.
No, I'm not talking about me personally, Reach. I'm talking about like if I train people, if I have a system that comes in. You see what I'm saying?
Well, I'm saying like,
you mean
even
like
in that, there's got to be some loss of efficiency, right? With me stepping out and hiring other trainers.
Oh, yeah.
There's probably not. But I guess it depends on training and the systems that you have in place and all that kind of stuff. So you can still build something that's really, really good with other people. So and that's probably what you have to do to grow to a certain point. So one of the stories in that 10X book was the lady who was a realtor, right? And then she started hiring people underneath her, and she started a brokerage, and then, you know, she's able to really 10X her career because of that. And then eventually she owns multiple brokerages and all that stuff. And they do, like, I think it's like $14 billion a year, something stupid.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So
change.
So like you can't grow to that by yourself as a realtor, but you can build a company. You can build something that does by focusing down on what's the most important thing for you to get to the next level.
Yeah, and I guess one of the main points I'm getting to with that is, like, some things are purpose, some things are hobby, right? And you have to really figure out why you're doing what you're doing. Some people just do stuff just because it was available.
So on that example, what if she had started a side hustle of flipping houses? Like, there's people who flip houses who make tons of money, and you can do that, but you can't do both. So you got to pick one, right?
You do, yeah. So, like, ask yourself, why am I starting this side hustle?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, why? I'll never forget, there was this youth pastor I was talking to. I said, hey, man, how'd you get into being a youth pastor? He said, well, when I was in high school, I decided after I graduated I was going to go to college and be an attorney. Because I wanted to because I'm smart, you know, I can negotiate and all this stuff, and I'm gonna make as much money as I can so that I can have time. Once I'm wealthy, I can have time to go and speak to the youth and stuff like that and doing ministry. And then somebody came to me and said, why don't you just go straight into doing what you're passionate about, what you think is purposeful, and then figure out the money of it later, you know what I'm saying, type of thing. And he was like, so that's what I did. So I think a lot of people are doing things just because it's available. They have a plan, but they don't take it far enough. Like, they don't ripen up and like, what are you trying to do?
Yeah,
I believe
what's the long-term vision?
Yeah, what's the long-term vision? What are you passionate about? What is purpose? What is your purpose? Like, throw yourself into that, make that thing work, and make it efficient and make it big, and 10x that, instead of trying to go all these different avenues, because that's a 2X mindset right there.
Yeah.
You know?
Mhm.
So it's the same thing with you, like you talk about all the time. It's like, I don't, and it's one of the most profound things you ever said to me. I said, hey, Keith, why don't you do wholesaling? You said, well, the same energy that you put into wholesaling, I can put into finding one multifamily property,
Yeah.
you know, a year and make money forever, you know? So
Yeah.
it's the same kind of philosophy.
Well, it's the same thing, you know, driving past that mobile home dealership and thinking, well,
Yeah.
I could do that business. That would, you know, but
why?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
That
so-
that same energy can be focused into the vehicle that's actually my main focus.
Yeah, yeah. And that
just do
comes
that.
back to Michelangelo also. So he knew what he was passionate about. He knew what he was trying to accomplish. So one of the key things is find out what do you want to do? What are you passionate about? Start there. Define that, because I know there's so many people just doing stuff just because it was available, or they don't think they have any skills. If you don't have any skills, you can develop skills, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So what are you passionate about? Let's start from there, because I do believe that if, like, they, you know, it's so cliche now. How does it go? If you love what you do, you don't have to work a day in your life, type of thing. Like, I know you enjoy being a real estate investor, and it's fun. It's like playing Monopoly in real life, you know?
Yeah,
That's how I feel. I love
fun.
crunching numbers and doing stuff like that, you know?
Yeah.
So find what you're passionate about and kind of go from there.
Yep. There you go.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, man.
Have fun.
Yep.
Have a good day.